The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For decades, Darth Vader had felt only the cold, seductive power of the dark side flowing through that web, rage, hatred, and the exquisite control that came from surrendering to passion. But in a single moment on Cloud City, standing on an observation deck suspended above Bespin's churning gases, the web trembled. Something long buried, something he had believed dead and cremated on the volcanic shores of Mustafar, clawed its way back to the surface. No. That's not true. That's impossible. Luke Skywalker's voice cracked with anguish, his young face contorted in denial. Vader stood motionless, his respirator marking the seconds with mechanical precision. Through the Force, he felt Luke's horror, his confusion, his desperate need for this to be a lie. And beneath his own armor, beneath the charred remnants of the man who had been Anakin Skywalker, something stirred that he had not felt in 20 years. Grief. Not the bitter fury that had sustained him through 2 decades of service to the Emperor. Not the cold satisfaction of crushing rebellion sympathizers or hunting down the last Jedi. This was something purer, more agonizing. This was the grief of a father watching his son's world collapse. "Search your feelings," Vader said, his voice modulated by the vocabulary that gave him speech. "You know it to be true." Luke staggered backward, his mechanical hand, so like Vader's own, gripping the railing. "No. No." Vader extended his hand, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, the gesture was not a threat. "Luke. You can destroy the Emperor. He has foreseen this. It is your destiny. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son." The words had been rehearsed, planned during his pursuit of the young rebel. The Emperor's vision had shown him this path: turn the sun, overthrow the master, claim the galaxy. It was the way of the Sith. It was what Vader had believed he wanted. But as Luke cried out in anguish, "I'll never join you," and threw himself into the abyss rather than accept his father's hand, something inside Vader's chest cracked with a sound no one else could hear. The dark side surged, screaming at him to use the Force, to catch the boy, to drag him back and force compliance. Vader's hand rose, power gathering. And stopped. In that frozen instant, as Luke tumbled towards certain death, Vader saw not a rebel pilot or a potential apprentice. He saw a child. His child. Padmé's child. The son he had never known, the family he had been promised would die because of his actions, now real and solid and falling away from him just as everything else in his life had fallen away. The rage that had sustained him for decades suddenly felt hollow. Luke caught himself on an antenna array extending from the underside of Cloud City, dangling thousands of feet above the gas giant's core. Through the Force, Vader felt him reaching out, crying for help, calling to someone. Not to him. To another. Skywalker. The name echoed through the Force, and somewhere in the city above, Vader sensed a response. The Millennium Falcon. Solo and the others. They would come for Luke. They would save him. Vader stood alone on the observation deck, watching his son dangle from that antenna, and felt the first crack in the armor around his heart widen into a chasm. What have I become? The thought arrived unbidden, in a voice he barely recognized, younger, warmer, not yet mechanically filtered. A voice from before the flames. He had told himself for 20 years that Anakin Skywalker was dead, that the weak, sentimental Jedi had been burned away to reveal the powerful Sith Lord beneath. He had believed the Emperor's teachings, that attachment was weakness, that love was a chain, that only through the dark side could he gain the power to prevent loss. But he had lost everything anyway. Padmé. Obi-Wan. Ahsoka. His own humanity. And now, his son, the one miracle, the one piece of Padmé that had survived, had chosen death rather than take his hand. The dark side howled through Vader's mind, demanding action, commanding him to retrieve the boy by force, to break his will and mold him into a proper apprentice. The Emperor would be pleased. The plan could still succeed. Vader's fist clenched. Then, slowly, deliberately, he turned away from the railing. His breathing filled the observation deck, in, out, each cycle a reminder of his dependence, his slavery to the suit, to the pain, to the empire that had rebuilt him. He had survived for decades on hatred, but what had it brought him? Power without purpose. Strength without meaning. A son who would rather die than know him. The Millennium Falcon streaked past the windows, dipping low beneath the city's superstructure. Vader watched it go, making no move to stop it, to alert the garrison, to fulfill his duty to the Empire. Instead, he reached out through the Force one final time, not to dominate or control, but simply to feel Luke's presence as it retreated into the distance. The boy lived. Against all odds, against Vader's own dark momentum, Luke had survived. And in that survival, Vader saw something he had not allowed himself to see in 20 years, a choice. The Emperor had taught him that his path was inevitable, that darkness was destiny, that the man he had been was merely an illusion masking the monster he was always meant to become. But Luke had been given the same choice on this platform, join the darkness or die. And had chosen differently. If Luke could choose, then perhaps. Vader turned toward the elevator that would take him back to his Star Destroyer. His cape swirled behind him, black against the orange glow of Bespin's clouds. Every step felt heavier than the last, not from the weight of his armor but from the weight of decision crystallizing in his mind. He had been Palpatine's weapon, his enforcer, his apprentice for 2 decades. He had hunted Jedi, crushed rebellions, and served the Emperor's will without question. He had told himself it was necessary, that the galaxy needed order, that the Empire brought peace even through fear. But the Empire had taken his son from him before he even knew the boy existed. The Emperor had lied about Padmé's death, manipulated him, used his fear and pain as chains. And Vader was so very tired of chains. When he reached his meditation chamber aboard the Executor, Vader sealed the door and finally allowed his helmet to unlock. The hiss of escaping pressure was followed by the agonizing rush of unfiltered air against his scarred lungs. Without the mask's respirator, each breath was labor, each moment a reminder of Mustafar's flames. In the polished surface of the chamber's walls, he caught a glimpse of what remained of Anakin Skywalker, pale, scarred flesh, eyes that glowed yellow with the dark side's corruption, a skull-like visage that would haunt any who saw it. This is what I am, he thought. This is what I chose. But then another thought, quieter, more dangerous, it doesn't have to be what I remain. The dark side shrieked in his mind, rejecting the thought, clawing at his will. To turn from the Emperor was death. To abandon the power that sustained him was suicide. The suit needed the dark side's energy to function, to keep his ruined body alive. Without it, he would. Vader sealed his helmet back in place, but the thought would not be silenced. Luke had chosen possible death over certain darkness. Could a father do any less? If you want to see more alternate Star Wars timelines where everything changes with one decision, hit that subscribe button and drop a "what if" scenario you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Executor drifted through space above Bespin, a dagger of Imperial might that had pursued the Millennium Falcon across the galaxy. In his private quarters, Vader stood before a holographic projector, his hand hovering over the activation switch. The message was already prepared, encrypted with codes only one person in the galaxy could decrypt. But sending it would be treason. The word felt strange in his mind. For 20 years, he had defined treason. He was its judge, its executioner, the instrument by which the Emperor punished those who defied Imperial authority. Now he contemplated becoming the very thing he had hunted. His son's face haunted him. Not the anguished expression as Luke fell, but the determination in his eyes just before he let go. The boy had believed so strongly that darkness was not inevitable that he had been willing to die rather than surrender to it. That kind of conviction was not weakness. Vader had seen weak men, and they always chose survival over principle. Luke was strong in ways Vader had forgotten existed. The dark side churned within him, feeding on his uncertainty, his pain, twisting it into familiar shapes. Anger at the Emperor for lying about Padme. Rage at Obi-Wan for hiding Luke from him. Hatred for the rebellion that had put his son in danger. The emotions were fuel, power, the foundation of everything he had become. But beneath them, quieter and far more dangerous, was something else, hope. It was a feeling Vader had not entertained since Padme died in his arms, or so he had believed. The Emperor had shown him her body, had told him that Anakin's rage had killed her, that the children had died with her. 20 years of believing that lie had carved a hollow in Vader's chest deeper than any wound. Now he knew the truth. The children, no, not children, Luke and another, he could sense it now, a second presence hidden somewhere in the galaxy, had lived. Palpatine had stolen them, hidden them, used Vader's grief as a leash. The Emperor was not his master. He was his jailer. Vader's hand slammed down on the activation switch. The holoprojector flared to life, but instead of transmitting to Coruscant, instead of reporting his success in identifying and confronting the rebel pilot, the signal arrowed toward a different destination entirely. The Rebel Alliance. Static filled the chamber for a long moment, and Vader wondered if his gambit had failed before it began. The rebellion's communication networks were fragmented by necessity, always shifting to avoid Imperial detection. The codes he had captured from previous operations might already be outdated, the frequencies abandoned. Then a voice crackled through, sharp and suspicious, unidentified transmission, you are broadcasting on a secured Alliance frequency. Identify yourself immediately or this channel will be terminated. Vader recognized the accent, Mon Mothma, the rebellion's political leader. She had been a senator once, before the Empire, before Palpatine had dissolved the last pretense of democracy. Anakin Skywalker had known her, had debated her in the Senate chambers during the Clone Wars. She would remember his voice, even filtered through the vocabulator. Senator Mothma, Vader said, and despite everything, despite the mechanical rasp of his respirator, he could not keep a trace of irony from the title. I am transmitting on this frequency to propose a meeting. Silence. Then, this is a secured channel. How did you? She stopped. Recognition dawned in her voice, colder than deep space. Lord Vader. Yes. If this is a trap, if you think the Alliance will fall for such an obvious. I have information regarding Luke Skywalker, Vader interrupted. Information the Emperor does not yet possess. Information that will matter to your rebellion. Another pause, longer this time. When Mon Mothma spoke again, her voice was carefully neutral. If you've harmed him. He lives. He escaped. But that is not what I am offering. Vader's hands clenched at his sides. The words were acid on his tongue, each one a betrayal of everything he had been for 2 decades. I wish to discuss terms of defection. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background noise of the transmission seemed to vanish, as if the entire Rebel Alliance had collectively held its breath. You, Mon Mothma finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, wish to defect. To the rebellion. Yes. Forgive my skepticism, Lord Vader, but you have spent 20 years slaughtering anyone who opposed the Emperor. You have destroyed worlds, murdered Jedi, crushed hope wherever it dared to show itself. And now you expect us to believe you've had a change of heart. I do not expect you to believe anything, Vader replied. I expect you to be pragmatic. The Empire's supreme military commander wishes to provide intelligence, strategic capabilities, and access to Imperial resources. Whether you trust my motivations is irrelevant to the value of what I offer. Everything about your motivations is relevant, Mon Mothma shot back. The moment we allow you anywhere near Alliance operations, you could transmit our locations, our fleet positions, our plans directly to the Emperor. You could destroy us more completely than any Death Star. The Death Star was destroyed by your rebellion, Vader said quietly. My son was the pilot who fired the killing shot. Another silence, this one heavy with implications. Vader could almost hear the calculations running through Mon Mothma's mind. Luke Skywalker, the hero of Yavin, was Darth Vader's son. The political complications alone were staggering. That, Mon Mothma said carefully, is a claim that will require substantial proof. I have proof. I have the Emperor's own files on Luke's parentage, stolen from his personal archives on Coruscant. I can provide genetic documentation, historical records of Padme Amidala's pregnancy, everything you need to verify the truth. Vader paused. But more than that, I can provide something the rebellion has never possessed, a Sith Lord willing to stand against the Emperor. Why? The single word cut through the transmission like a blade. Why now? What changed? Vader looked down at his gloved hands, artificial, cybernetic, more machine than man. He thought of Luke dangling from that antenna, choosing death over darkness. He thought of Padme, dying while he was transformed into this armor-clad nightmare. He thought of Ahsoka, of Obi-Wan, of everyone he had lost to his own choices. I discovered I still had something to lose, he said finally. And I will not lose it to the Emperor's lies again. Mon Mothma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of terrible decision. If this is genuine, and I stress if, then you understand what the Alliance will demand. You would have to surrender yourself, submit to imprisonment, face justice for your crimes. You would have no authority, no guarantees, no protections. Many in the rebellion lost families to your actions. They will call for your execution. I understand. You would be the most valuable prisoner in the galaxy, but also the most dangerous. The security measures alone. I will submit to whatever constraints you require, Vader interrupted. But I will only negotiate these terms with one person present, Luke Skywalker. Luke is recovering from injuries sustained during, Mon Mothma caught herself. During a recent mission. He's not available for. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Vader's hand moved toward the console, ready to terminate the transmission. Wait. The command was sharp. Vader could hear muffled conversation in the background, other voices arguing, debating. Finally, Mon Mothma returned. We will arrange a meeting. Neutral territory. You will come alone, unarmed, and submit to immediate restraint. Any deviation from our conditions and our ships will destroy you before you can transmit a warning to the Empire. Are these terms acceptable? They are. Then transmit your proposed coordinates. We will send confirmation within 12 hours. Mon Mothma hesitated, then added, Lord Vader, if this is a deception, if you harm Luke or any Alliance personnel, know that we will make your death last years. If this were a deception, Senator, the Executor's complement of Star Destroyers would already be triangulating this signal. I am transmitting coordinates now. Vader input a location, a remote system far from Imperial trade routes, a place where Anakin Skywalker had once hidden Padme during the Clone Wars. I will be there in 48 hours. Come prepared to negotiate, or come prepared to execute me. Either way, my service to the Emperor ends today. He terminated the transmission before Mon Mothma could respond. The meditation chamber fell silent except for the rhythm of his respirator. Vader stood in the darkness, feeling the dark side rage against his decision like a storm battering a fortress wall. The power that had sustained him for decades was screaming, demanding that he return to Palpatine, that he beg forgiveness, that he crush this momentary weakness. But Vader had lived with weakness for 20 years, physical weakness, trapped in this suit, dependent on machinery for every breath. He had convinced himself that the dark side made him strong, that serving the Emperor gave him purpose. He had been lying to himself. Real strength was what Luke had shown on that platform, the courage to choose principle over power, to risk everything rather than compromise what he believed. If a boy barely out of his teens could find that courage, then perhaps the broken remnant of Anakin Skywalker could find it too. Vader opened a secure channel to the Executor's bridge. Admiral Pyatt, set course for the following coordinates. Maximum speed. Inform the crew that we are pursuing a confidential intelligence matter on direct orders from the Emperor. At once, Lord Vader, Piet replied crisply. The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. The Executor's crew would obey without question, they always did. By the time Imperial command realized Vader had gone rogue, by the time the Emperor sensed the betrayal through the Force, Vader would already be in rebel custody. And then the real battle would begin. Not a battle of lightsabers and Force lightning, though that would come. The real battle would be convincing the rebellion that Darth Vader, butcher of Jedi, enforcer of Imperial tyranny, the Emperor's most feared servant, could be trusted. Could be redeemed. Vader sank into his meditation chamber seat, feeling the connections interface with his suit's systems. He reached out through the Force, searching, and found Luke's presence like a distant star, wounded, confused, but burning with that same stubborn hope that had driven him to defy his father. I will not fail you again, my son, Vader whispered to the darkness. Not as I failed your mother. The dark side howled its fury, but for the first time in 20 years, Vader did not answer its call. The Emperor sat upon his throne in the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, ancient fingers steepled before his hidden face, when the disturbance rippled through the Force like a scream across still water. For a moment, Palpatine did not move. He simply felt the tremor, tasted its texture, analyzed its implications with the patience of a predator who had spent decades weaving webs across the galaxy. Then, slowly, his lips curled into something that might have been a smile on a less twisted face. Curious, he whispered to the empty throne room. His apprentice, his carefully crafted weapon, his broken Jedi-turned-Sith enforcer, was in turmoil. The bond between master and apprentice was not affection, it was possession, control, a leash woven from pain and dependence. Through that bond, Palpatine could feel Vader's conflict like blood in water. The boy. Of course. The Skywalker whelp had triggered something in Vader's stunted emotions, some fragment of Anakin Skywalker that the Emperor had believed thoroughly cremated. Sentiment. Attachment. Weakness. Palpatine closed his eyes and reached deeper through the Force, extending his perception across the thousands of light-years separating Coruscant from Bespin. He felt the Executor moving, felt Vader's presence aboard it, but something was wrong. The dark side's grip on his apprentice had loosened. Not vanished. Not yet. But loosened. No, Palpatine said softly, his voice hardening. No, my old friend. You do not get to leave me. He reached through their bond with the full weight of his power, dark side energy lashing out like invisible chains, seeking to drag Vader back into obedience. For 20 years, these chains had held. Whenever doubt crept into Vader's mind, whenever the pain became too much, whenever some buried memory of Anakin Skywalker surfaced, Palpatine had crushed it with casual contempt. But this time, the chains met resistance. Vader's presence in the Force shifted, recoiling from the Emperor's touch, and for the first time in 2 decades, Palpatine felt something he had not expected to feel from his apprentice, defiance. The Emperor's eyes snapped open, burning yellow in the throne room's shadows. Treachery, he hissed. The word echoed off the vaulted ceiling, bouncing through the vast empty space. After everything I gave you. After I saved you, rebuilt you, gave you purpose, you dare. He rose from his throne, robes pooling around him like liquid darkness. His presence in the Force expanded, pressing against the minds of every Force-sensitive being on Coruscant, a wave of malevolent power that sent Jedi survivors deep in hiding gasping with sudden terror. Palpatine strode across the throne room and activated a holographic comm array. Within seconds, the image of Grand Moff Tarkin's replacement, Admiral Kendall Ozzel, materialized before him. The fool had been promoted after the Death Star's destruction, despite his obvious incompetence. Your Majesty, Ozzel said, bowing deeply. Locate the Executor immediately, Palpatine commanded. I require Lord Vader's exact position and heading. At once, Your Majesty. May I ask if there is? You may not. The Emperor's voice dropped to a sibilant whisper that made Ozzel visibly pale. Locate him. Now. The hologram vanished. Palpatine paced, his mind racing through possibilities. Vader was powerful, yes, the most gifted Force user he had encountered in 1,000 years of Sith planning. But power without guidance was merely chaos. Vader needed the dark side to survive, needed the Emperor's knowledge to control his abilities, needed the structure of the Empire to give his existence meaning. Didn't he? The Emperor had been so certain. Vader's transformation on Mustafar had been perfect, the physical agony that required constant Force-augmented endurance, the psychological trauma of losing everything he loved, the dependence on the suit that only Palpatine knew how to maintain. Layer upon layer of chains, each one reinforcing the others, creating a servant who could never escape. But parents, Palpatine reflected bitterly, could be irrational about their offspring. He had known about the Skywalker children from the moment of their birth. He had sensed them in Padmé's womb during those final days, twin sparks of Force potential that would have complicated his plans considerably if allowed to survive with their father's knowledge. So he had lied. Told Vader that his wife's death had taken the children with her. Scattered them across the galaxy to opposite ends of civilized space, the boy to Tatooine, the girl to Alderaan. It had been elegant. Cruel. Effective. Until now. The hologram reactivated. Ozzel's face was troubled. Your Majesty, the Executor is currently in the Bespin system, but our tracking shows it preparing to jump to hyperspace. Lord Vader has not filed a flight plan with Imperial Command, and his destination is unclear. Has he responded to standard Imperial hails? He has not, Your Majesty. Palpatine's hands clenched within his robes. Dispatch the Third Fleet to intercept. I want the Executor contained, and I want Lord Vader returned to Coruscant immediately. If he resists, the Emperor paused, considering. Inform the fleet commanders that they are authorized to disable his vessel. Use whatever force is necessary short of destroying the ship. I want Vader alive. Your Majesty, the Third Fleet is currently engaged in operations along the Outer Rim. Did I ask about their current operations? Palpatine's voice cracked like a whip. Redirect them. Now. Every moment you delay gives the traitor time to escape. Ozzel bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the holoprojector. It will be done, Your Majesty. The transmission ended. Palpatine stood alone in the throne room, feeling the anger coil through him like serpents beneath his skin. Anger was fuel, power, the essence of the dark side, but it had to be controlled, channeled, used with precision. He would not lose Vader. The investment was too great, the alternative too problematic. Without his apprentice, the Empire's military efficiency would decrease by 30% within months. The rebellion would gain hope from Vader's absence. And worst of all, if Vader truly turned to the light side, assuming such a thing was even possible for someone so consumed by darkness, he would become the single greatest threat to Palpatine's reign. A reformed Sith Lord, fighting for redemption, knowing all of the Emperor's secrets. Unacceptable. Palpatine activated another channel, this one encrypted with codes that only a handful of beings in the galaxy could access. The figure that appeared was shrouded, face hidden behind a mask of blackened metal. My Lord Emperor, the figure intoned. I have a task for you, Palpatine said. Lord Vader has betrayed the Empire. He is to be located, captured, and returned to me. I do not care how many ships you must destroy or how many systems you must burn to accomplish this. Find him. And if he resists, Master, then remind him of the price of defiance. Palpatine's eyes gleamed. Vader's suit is coded to my personal override commands. I will transmit them to you. Should he prove uncooperative, you have my permission to activate the pain protocols. The shrouded figure bowed. It will be my pleasure, Master. See that it is swift. Vader is powerful, but he is not invincible. And he is certainly not powerful enough to escape me. The hologram faded. Palpatine returned to his throne, settling into it like a spider at the center of its web. He reached out through the Force again, this time not to Vader but to the galaxy itself. To every Inquisitor, every dark side adept, every Force-sensitive slave he had collected over the decades. Through the Force, they all heard his command, find Vader. Bring him to me. Alive. But even as he issued the order, even as he set the full weight of the Imperial military machine in motion, Palpatine felt something he had not experienced in many years. Uncertainty. Vader had been the culmination of a 1,000-year plan. The Chosen One, twisted into the perfect Sith weapon. The boy prophesied to bring balance to the Force, transformed into its greatest threat. Everything Palpatine had built, every manipulation, every war, every political maneuver, had led to creating Darth Vader. And now that creation was slipping from his grasp. You cannot escape what you are, my old friend, Palpatine whispered to the empty throne room. You are Vader. You are darkness. You are mine. But deep in the most ancient, most honest part of his consciousness, the part that had studied the Force for over a century, that understood its mysteries better than any living being, Palpatine recognized a truth he did not want to acknowledge. The Force had been unbalanced for decades, tilted toward darkness by the Sith's machinations. The prophecy of the Chosen One spoke of balance, and balance required opposition. If Vader was truly turning from the dark side, if that spark of Anakin Skywalker was genuinely rekindling, then the galaxy was about to witness something it had not seen in 1,000 years, a Sith Lord's redemption. And that, Palpatine knew, could change everything. He stood abruptly, robes swirling around him. The throne room's shadows seemed to deepen, responding to his fury. No, he said again, this time with absolute conviction. You are mine, Vader. You have always been mine. And I will burn the galaxy to ash before I let you go. Lightning crackled across his fingertips, dancing between his hands like captured stars. The Emperor smiled, and it was an expression of pure malevolence. Come then, my fallen apprentice, he whispered. Run to your rebels. Seek your redemption. But know this, I am coming for you. And when I find you, you will remember why you knelt before me all those years ago. In the throne room's depths, in the shadows where even the palace guards feared to look, ancient Sith artifacts hummed with awakened power. The Emperor was preparing for war, not against the rebellion, not against any external threat, but against the one being who knew him best, who understood his power, who had served at his side for 2 decades. The war between master and apprentice had begun. And only one would survive it. The Millennium Falcon drifted in the medical frigate's hangar bay, its hull still bearing scorch marks from the desperate escape from Cloud City. Inside the frigate's medical ward, Luke Skywalker lay in a Bacta observation tank, his hand, his new mechanical hand, submerged in the healing fluids while medical droids monitored his vital signs. But Luke wasn't thinking about his hand. He stared at the ceiling through the transparent Bacta, his mind replaying the same moment over and over. The observation deck. The chasm. His father's voice, distorted by that mechanical respirator, speaking the words that had shattered Luke's understanding of everything. No. I am your father. Luke's remaining organic hand clenched beneath the Bacta. It couldn't be true. It had to be a lie, some psychological trick designed to break him, to make him doubt, to turn him against Obi-Wan and everything the old Jedi had taught him. But the Force didn't lie. When Vader had spoken those words, Luke had reached out instinctively through the Force, searching for deception, desperate to find the falsehood that would let him reject the claim. Instead, he had felt only certainty. Truth. A connection between them that ran deeper than words, older than hate, forged in blood and midichlorians and destiny itself. Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker. His father was the Empire's greatest monster. The medical ward door hissed open. Luke turned his head as much as the Bacta tank's restraints allowed and saw Leia enter, her expression tight with concern. Behind her came Han Solo, moving stiffly. Carbonite hibernation had left him partially blind, his vision still recovering, and Chewbacca, the Wookiee's massive form filling the doorway. Hey kid, Han said, squinting in Luke's general direction. Medical droids say you're almost done cooking. How's the new hand? Luke flexed the mechanical fingers through the bacta, watching servos that were more sophisticated than anything he'd seen on moisture vaporators. It works. Feels strange. Better strange than missing, Han replied. Trust me, I know from experience. Leia moved closer to the tank, and Luke saw something in her eyes that made his chest tighten, not just concern, but a kind of knowing. As if she could sense what he was feeling through the force connection they'd discovered in that desperate moment when he'd called for help, dangling above Bespin's core. Luke, Leia said quietly, we need to talk. Mon Mothma has called an emergency session of Alliance Command. She says it concerns you directly. Luke's stomach tightened. What happened? We're not entirely sure, Leia admitted. But apparently, someone contacted the Alliance on secured channels. Someone who claims to have information about your parentage. The word hung in the air like a blade. Luke felt his heart rate spike, and immediately the medical droids swarmed the tank, chirping concern about his vital signs. He waved them off. Who contacted you? Leia and Han exchanged glances. Chewbacca growled something low and worried. That's the problem, Han said. According to Mon Mothma, the person who made contact was Darth Vader, Leia finished, her voice hard as Durasteel. Luke's world tilted. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The bacta suddenly felt suffocating, the tank too small, the walls of the medical frigate closing in. He contacted you. Why? Is it a trap? Did he? We don't know, Leia interrupted. Mon Mothma thinks he might be serious. He claims he wants to defect from the Empire, and he's demanding that you be present when negotiations begin. That's insane, Han said flatly. It's obviously a trap. Vader's probably sitting in the middle of a Star Destroyer fleet right now, just waiting for us to walk into his arms. The Security Council agrees with you, Leia said. Admiral Akbar wants to ignore the transmission entirely. General Rekan thinks we should use the meeting to ambush Vader, try to capture or kill him. But Mon Mothma, she trailed off. Mon Mothma what? Luke demanded. She thinks he might be telling the truth. Leia's expression was conflicted, anger and uncertainty warring across her features. She says that in all her years dealing with Imperial communications, she's never heard Vader sound like he did on that transmission. She thinks something happened on Cloud City that changed him. Luke's mind raced. Something had changed on Cloud City, the revelation, the choice Vader had offered him, the fall. But what could possibly make Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, the butcher of the Jedi, decide to betray everything he'd served for decades? Unless he let me go, Luke whispered. Everyone turned to stare at him. What? Han said. On Cloud City. After I fell. I was hanging from that antenna, and I could feel him through the Force. He was still there, on the observation deck, watching. He could have captured me easily. He could have used the Force to pull me back up, or he could have alerted the garrison, sent TIE fighters after the Falcon. Luke's voice grew stronger. But he didn't. He just watched us escape. Maybe he figured you'd already been neutralized, Han suggested. No point wasting resources when. No, Luke shook his head emphatically. You don't understand. Vader spent the entire pursuit obsessed with finding me, with turning me to the dark side. He wouldn't have just given up because I fell. He would have. Luke paused, remembering that moment of connection, the strange grief he'd felt bleeding through their bond. He would have done anything to get me back. But he didn't. He let me go. Leia's jaw tightened. So what are you saying? That Vader had a sudden attack of conscience. That the man who tortured me on the Death Star, who destroyed Alderaan. Tarkin destroyed Alderaan, Luke said quietly. Vader stood by and watched. Leia's voice cracked with fury. He held me still with the Force while Tarkin murdered 2 billion people. He's a monster, Luke. Whatever happened on Cloud City doesn't change that. I'm not saying it does, Luke replied. I'm saying that maybe something's changed. Maybe he's your father and you want to believe he can be redeemed. Leia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I know what he told you, Luke. I felt it through our connection when it happened. I felt your pain, your confusion. And I understand why you want this to be real, why you want to believe that Darth Vader can turn back into Anakin Skywalker. But wanting something doesn't make it true. Chewbacca growled something long and thoughtful. Han nodded slowly. The Wookiee's got a point. Even if Vader's serious about defecting, and that's a big if, we'd be crazy to trust him. The amount of damage he could do if this is a setup. Then we don't trust him, Luke said. But we also don't throw away what could be the biggest intelligence opportunity the Alliance has ever had. If Vader really does want to defect, he'd bring knowledge of Imperial fleet movements, secret bases, the Emperor's plans, everything we've been fighting blind without for years. Or he brings a tracking beacon and leads the entire Imperial Navy straight to our fleet, Han countered. That's why we take precautions, Luke insisted. Meet him somewhere remote, keep our main fleet far away, approach with overwhelming force. If it's a trap, we abort. If he tries anything, we destroy him. But if he's serious, Luke met Leia's eyes. If he's serious, we might have a chance to end this war. The medical ward fell silent except for the bubbling of the Bacta tank and the soft chirping of droids. Leia stared at Luke for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Mon Mothma wants to see you, she finally said. The Command Council is meeting in 2 hours. They're going to decide how to respond to Vader's transmission, and they want your input. She paused. They're also going to want to know if it's true. If you're really Vader's son. Luke looked down at his mechanical hand, flexing the fingers that were so like his father's own prosthetics. It's true, he said quietly. I felt it in the Force. Obi-Wan confirmed it before he died, not in those words, but he told me my father was betrayed and murdered by Vader. He was trying to protect me from the truth. Some truth, Han muttered. Kid, are you sure you're ready for this? Because if you walk into that command meeting and tell them you're Vader's son, your whole life in the Alliance is going to change. People are going to look at you differently. They're going to wonder if you can be trusted, if the dark side might be hereditary, if... I know, Luke interrupted. But I can't lie to them. Not about this. He looked at each of his friends in turn. I need to know if you'll stand with me. Not because you think Vader can be redeemed, not because you believe his defection is real, but because you trust me. Because you know I'd never betray the Alliance, no matter who my father is. Chewbacca roared an affirmative, stepping forward to place one massive paw against the Bacta tank. Han sighed, running a hand through his hair. Kid, I'd follow you into a black hole if you asked. You know that. Even if your old man happens to be the second most evil bastard in the galaxy. Second most? Luke asked despite himself. Well, there's still the Emperor, Han replied with a weak grin. Luke turned to Leia, the person whose opinion mattered most. She stood rigid, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. My father, my real father, Bail Organa, used to tell me that everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Even people who've done terrible things. He believed that the light could reach anyone if they were willing to accept it. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm not as good a person as he was, Luke. I can't forgive Vader for what he's done. I don't know if I ever can. But... She reached out, placing her hand against the tank next to Chewbacca's paw. But you're my brother. And I won't abandon you. Whatever happens, whatever the Council decides, I'll stand with you. Luke felt something break open in his chest, relief, gratitude, and a fierce determination that burned brighter than any lightsaber. Thank you, he said. All of you. The medical droid chose that moment to chirp insistently, indicating that Luke's treatment cycle was complete. The bacta drained away, and the tank opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Luke emerged, dripping and unsteady, wrapped immediately in thermal blankets by attending droids. As he dried off and dressed in a simple Alliance flight suit, his mind was already racing ahead to the command meeting, to the impossible decision the rebellion faced. Darth Vader wanted to defect. His father wanted to come home. And somehow, Luke would have to convince the Alliance that giving him that chance was worth the risk, even if he wasn't entirely sure he believed it himself. The command chamber aboard the rebel flagship was packed with more people than Luke had ever seen in one room during his time with the Alliance. Every major military leader, every political representative, every senior officer who could reach the rendezvous point had assembled for this emergency session. The air was thick with tension and the low murmur of worried conversation. Luke stood near the back of the chamber, flanked by Leia and Han. He could feel dozens of eyes on him, some curious, some sympathetic, many openly hostile. Word had spread quickly. The hero of Yavin, the boy who destroyed the Death Star, was Darth Vader's son. The whispers followed him like shadows. At the front of the chamber, Mon Mothma stood beside a holographic projector, her expression grave. Next to her was Admiral Akbar, the Mon Calamari's bulbous eyes scanning the assembled crowd with military precision. General Riken, who had commanded Echo Base on Hoth, stood with his arms crossed, clearly skeptical of whatever was about to be proposed. Mon Mothma raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began. "What I'm about to share with you is unprecedented in the history of our rebellion. 48 hours ago, this alliance received a communication on one of our most secure channels. The transmission came from Darth Vader." The chamber erupted. Shouts of disbelief, anger, and fear overlapped into a cacophony. Mon Mothma waited patiently for the noise to subside. "Lord Vader claims that he wishes to defect from the Empire," she continued once silence returned. "He has offered to provide intelligence, strategic resources, and his own services to the Alliance in exchange for asylum and the opportunity to negotiate terms directly with Luke Skywalker." Every head in the chamber turned toward Luke. He forced himself to stand straight, to meet their stares without flinching. "Before we discuss Vader's proposal," Mon Mothma said, "we must address the question that concerns us all. Commander Skywalker, is it true? Are you Darth Vader's son?" Luke's throat was dry. He stepped forward, aware that every word he spoke now would define how the Alliance saw him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. "Yes," he said clearly. "Darth Vader is my father. His real name is Anakin Skywalker. He was a Jedi Knight during the Clone Wars before he fell to the dark side and became the Emperor's apprentice. My mother was Padme Amidala, senator from Naboo. She died shortly after giving birth to me and my sister." The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different quality, shock, horror, and dawning realization as people made connections. Leia stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "I am Luke's twin sister," she announced, her voice cutting through the noise. "We were separated at birth and hidden from the Emperor to protect us. I was raised by Bail Organa on Alderaan. Luke was raised by our uncle on Tatooine. Neither of us knew the truth until recently. This is insane." A voice shouted from the crowd, General Dodonna, the tactical genius who had planned the Death Star assault. "You're telling us that two of our most prominent members are the children of our greatest enemy? How do we know this isn't some elaborate Imperial trick? How do we know they haven't been compromised?" "Because I destroyed the Death Star." Luke shot back, his voice sharp with anger. "Because Leia has sacrificed everything for this rebellion. Because we've bled for the Alliance, fought beside you, lost friends and family to the Empire. Are you really going to question our loyalty because of who our father chose to become?" "The boy has a point," Admiral Akbar said, his gravelly voice carrying authority. "Commander Skywalker's service record speaks for itself. Princess Leia's dedication to our cause is beyond question. Their parentage is shocking, yes, but it does not negate their actions. Doesn't it? Another voice called out, Commander Nara, a veteran of a dozen campaigns. The dark side is hereditary. The Sith pass their corruption through bloodlines. How do we know these two won't turn just like their father did? Because the Force doesn't work that way, Luke said firmly. The dark side is a choice, not a genetic disease. My father chose to fall. He chose to serve the Emperor. But he also chose to let me escape from Cloud City when he could have captured me. Something changed in him when he learned I existed. Maybe something can change even more. So you want us to trust him? General Regan stepped forward, his weathered face skeptical. You want this alliance to welcome Darth Vader, the man who has slaughtered thousands of our people, with open arms because he suddenly had a crisis of conscience. I want you to use your heads, Luke replied. Vader knows everything about the Empire's military structure. Fleet positions, command codes, the Emperor's plans, information that could save thousands of lives and shorten this war by years. Are you really going to throw that away because you're afraid? Damn right we're afraid, someone shouted. This could be a trap. Of course it could be a trap, Mon Mothma interjected, her voice calm but commanding. Which is why we take every possible precaution. We meet Vader in a remote system, far from any Alliance assets. We approach with overwhelming military force. We scan for tracking beacons, for Imperial ships, for any sign of deception. And if anything seems wrong, we abort immediately. And if Vader uses the Force to kill everyone at the meeting? Dodonna challenged. If he takes hostages? If this is just an elaborate way to assassinate our leadership? Then we make sure our leadership isn't at risk, Admiral Akbar said. We send a negotiating team, not the entire command structure. Military personnel who understand the risks and volunteer for the mission. And Luke, Mon Mothma added quietly. Vader specifically requested his presence. He won't negotiate without him. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Luke felt every eye return to him, weighing, judging, measuring his worth against his bloodline. Finally, a new voice spoke, older, measured, carrying the weight of experience. Commander Jan Dodonna stepped fully into the light, his lined face thoughtful. I knew Anakin Skywalker, he said quietly. Before the Clone Wars, when he was just a young Jedi Knight. He was brave, brilliant, and compassionate to a fault. He cared about people, not abstractly, like some Jedi, but personally, fiercely. He would throw himself into danger without hesitation if it meant saving lives. Dodonna paused. He was also impulsive, emotional, and terrified of loss. When the Clone Wars began, I watched those qualities twist into something darker. The Jedi Council used him as a weapon, sent him into battles that no one should have to fight. And somewhere along the way, he broke. Luke stared at Dodonna, barely breathing. This was the first time anyone had spoken about his father as a real person, not just a monster. I don't know if Anakin Skywalker can come back from what he's become, Dodonna continued. I don't know if redemption is possible for someone who's done what Vader has done. But I do know this, if there's even a chance, even the smallest possibility that we could turn the Emperor's right hand against him, we have to take it. The risk is enormous. But the potential gain, he shook his head. We might never get another opportunity like this. Strategically, Dodonna is correct, Admiral Akbar agreed. From a purely military perspective, recruiting Vader would shift the balance of this war dramatically in our favor. The question is whether the risk to our personnel and our security is acceptable. Nothing about this is acceptable. Regan exploded. We're talking about trusting a Sith Lord. A man who has betrayed every principle, every person, every promise he ever made. What makes you think he won't do the same to us? Because he has a son, Mon Mothma said softly. All eyes turned to her. And a daughter. For 20 years, Vader believed his children died with his wife. He had nothing left to lose, nothing to hope for, nothing to keep him anchored to his humanity. But now he knows the truth. He knows that part of Padme survived, that his family wasn't completely destroyed. That changes the equation. Or it makes him more dangerous, Regan countered. A Sith Lord with something to protect is unpredictable. Unpredictability is better than absolute loyalty to the Emperor, Akbar said. The debate raged on, voices rising and falling in waves of argument. Luke listened to them dissect his father's potential motivations, his trustworthiness, his value as an asset versus his danger as a threat. They spoke about Vader as if he were a piece on a holochess board, a variable in a strategic calculation. But Luke remembered that moment on the observation deck. He remembered the grief in Vader's presence, the hesitation before he'd offered his hand. His father had wanted him to join willingly, not through force. He had let him escape rather than drag him back. Those weren't the actions of a calculating manipulator. They were the actions of a father who had just discovered his son was alive. Enough, Luke said, his voice quiet but carrying across the chamber with unexpected authority. The Force amplified his words, made them impossible to ignore. You can debate strategy all night. You can calculate risks and weigh probabilities. But at the end of all those calculations, you're going to come back to one simple question: do we take the chance or not? He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes, forcing them to see him as more than just Vader's son. I know what my father has done, Luke continued. I know the pain he's caused, the lives he's destroyed. I know that some of you lost family to his actions. Friends. Entire worlds. And I know that nothing I say can make that hurt less or make trusting him feel safe. He took a deep breath. But I also know that the Force brought me to this moment for a reason. Obi-Wan told me that the Force has a will, that it guides us toward our destiny. My destiny led me to destroy the Death Star. It led me to Cloud City. It led me to discover who my father really is. And now it's leading me, leading all of us, to this choice. Luke stepped forward, standing in the center of the chamber. If you want someone to go meet Vader, to look him in the eye and determine if his defection is real, then send me. I'll know if he's lying. Through the Force, through our connection as father and son, I'll know. And if it's a trap, if this is just another Imperial deception, then I'll be the one who pays the price. Not you. Not the Alliance. Just me. Luke, no, Leia started to protest, but Luke cut her off with a gesture. This is my responsibility, he said firmly. My father. My choice. Let me do this. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Mon Mothma spoke, her voice heavy with the weight of command. Very well, she said. Commander Skywalker will lead the negotiating team. Admiral Akbar, assemble a security detail, volunteers only, people who understand the risks. General Regan, prepare a task force to accompany them, but maintain distance. If this is a trap, I want overwhelming firepower ready to respond. And if it's not a trap, someone asked. If Vader really does want to defect. Mon Mothma looked at Luke, and in her eyes, he saw the terrible burden of leadership, the knowledge that she was making a decision that could save or doom them all. Then we bring him in, she said quietly. And we pray to whatever gods are listening that we're making the right choice. The executor hung in the void of deep space, alone in a system so remote it didn't even have a name on Imperial star charts, just a numerical designation that Anakin Skywalker had memorized during the Clone Wars. He had brought Padme here once, between campaigns, when the war had threatened to consume him entirely. They had spent 3 days in orbit around the system's dead moon, talking about the future, about the life they would build when the fighting finally ended. That future had died with her. But now, standing in his meditation chamber as the appointed meeting time approached, Vader, no, not Vader anymore, he had to stop thinking of himself as Vader, felt that future's ghost stirring within him like a half-remembered dream. The transition was killing him. Not metaphorically. Literally. His suit's systems were failing, one by one, as he deliberately weakened his connection to the dark side. The armor had been designed to function with dark side energy flowing constantly through his body, using pain and hatred as fuel to keep his ruined lungs breathing, his damaged heart beating, his mangled nervous system firing. Without that energy, the suit was just machinery, and machinery could only do so much. He had 48 hours, perhaps less, before the biological components failed completely. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it brought a strange calm. For 20 years, he had been a prisoner in this armor, dependent on it for every breath, every movement. Death might be a form of freedom. But he would not die as Vader. If these were to be his final days, he would spend them as Anakin Skywalker, or at least trying to remember how to be that man. The meditation chamber's comm system chirped. Admiral Piatt's voice came through, carefully neutral. "My lord, we are receiving transmissions from multiple ships entering the system. Rebel vessels, configuration suggests diplomatic escort with heavy military support. They are requesting communication. Open the channel, Vader," Anakin commanded. His voice still carried that mechanical rasp, but he tried to soften it, to remember how he had spoken before the mask. "And Admiral, prepare yourself. What I am about to do will seem like madness. But I need you to trust that it serves a greater purpose." There was a long pause. "Then, I have served under your command for 5 years, Lord Vader. In that time, you have never led us astray. I will follow your orders, no matter how unusual they may be." The loyalty in Piatt's voice was unexpected, touching something in Anakin that he had thought long dead. "Thank you, Admiral. Your service has always been exemplary." Another pause, this one colored with surprise. Vader, no, Anakin, realized with a start that he had never thanked Piatt before. Had never thanked any of his subordinates. Vader didn't thank, he commanded, and failure meant death. He had been a terrible commanding officer. The holographic projector in the meditation chamber activated, and Luke's face appeared, older than Anakin remembered from their brief encounter on Cloud City, harder, marked by pain and impossible choices. But still recognizably Padme's son. He had her eyes, her determination, her refusal to accept injustice. "Lord Vader," Luke said, his voice carefully controlled. "I'm here as requested. The Alliance has agreed to hear your proposal." "Luke." Anakin's voice caught. It was the first time he had spoken his son's name aloud. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult." "Difficult doesn't begin to cover it," Luke replied. Around him, Anakin could see other figures, rebel soldiers, diplomats, and there, standing just behind Luke's shoulder, a young woman whose presence in the Force hit Anakin like a physical blow. Leia. His daughter. The twin he had sensed during his pursuit of Luke but never identified, never connected to the fragments of memory he retained from Padme's pregnancy. She stood with military bearing, her expression carved from ice, radiating hostility through the Force like a physical force. She hated him. Completely, justifiably, without reservation. "I can see your sister has joined you," Anakin said quietly. "Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan. Padme's daughter." Leia's expression hardened further. "I am Bail Organa's daughter. He raised me, taught me, loved me. Whoever you think my biological parents were is irrelevant." "You're right," Anakin said, and the admission seemed to surprise her. "Bail Organa was your father in every way that mattered. He was a good man, better than I ever was. Padme trusted him completely. She would be glad that you were raised by someone who truly understood what it meant to fight for justice." Leia's hostility flickered, just for a moment, confusion replacing some of the anger. She had expected Vader to assert paternal rights, to demand recognition. Instead, he had acknowledged the truth. Luke stepped forward, his posture tense. "Mon Mothma says you want to defect. That you're willing to provide intelligence and strategic support to the Alliance. Why? What changed?" You did, Anakin replied simply. For 20 years, I believed that I had destroyed everything I loved. I believed that Padme and our children died because of my choices, because I had been too weak to save them. The Emperor told me this, and I accepted it as truth because the alternative, that I might have been manipulated, that my fall had been orchestrated, was too painful to consider. He paused, feeling his damaged lungs struggle even with the respirator's assistance. But you lived, Luke. You and Leia both survived. And when I learned this truth, when I felt our connection through the Force on Cloud City, something inside me broke. Or perhaps it finally healed. I can no longer serve the Emperor knowing that he lied to me about the most important thing in my life. I can no longer be the weapon he forged from my grief. Pretty words, a new voice interjected. Amon Calamari appeared in the hologram. Admiral Akbar. Anakin recognized him from intelligence reports. But words are easy. Actions define us. You have spent 2 decades enforcing Imperial tyranny. You have killed Jedi, destroyed worlds, crushed hope wherever it arose. Why should we believe that you've suddenly had a change of heart? Because I am dying, Anakin said bluntly. The statement brought silence to the rebel transmission. My suit requires dark side energy to function. It was designed that way, a leash, ensuring that I could never turn from the Emperor without killing myself. As I weaken my connection to the dark side, as I try to remember what it means to be Anakin Skywalker rather than Darth Vader, my body is failing. I have days, perhaps hours, before critical systems shut down. Then why bother defecting at all? Leia demanded. If you're dying anyway, why not just let go? Why drag us into whatever this is? Because I have information that could save lives, Anakin replied. Because the Emperor is planning something that will make the Death Star look like a mercy. And because before I die, I want my children to know that their father, however briefly, however inadequately, tried to do the right thing. Luke's expression shifted, pain and hope warring across his features. What information? What is the Emperor planning? Anakin manipulated the meditation chamber's controls, and a data stream began transmitting to the rebel ships. Fleet positions for the next 3 months. Encrypted command codes for superstar destroyers. The location of the Emperor's secret research facility on BYSS. Intelligence on a new superweapon, worse than the Death Star, that's currently under construction. The hologram flickered as the rebels processed the incoming data. Anakin could hear frantic conversation in the background, analysts confirming that the codes were genuine, that the intelligence matched fragmentary reports they had received through other channels. This is real, someone whispered off-screen. Admiral Akbar's eyes narrowed. Why now? Why not transmit this data before arranging a meeting? Why risk a face-to-face encounter? Because I want asylum, Anakin said. I want medical treatment that can sustain me without requiring dark side energy. And I want the chance to stand beside my son, both my children, and fight against the empire I helped build. I have earned death 1,000 times over. But if I must die, let it be fighting for something that matters, not serving the Emperor's lies. You think we have the medical technology to keep you alive? Luke asked, his voice caught between hope and disbelief. I think the rebellion has some of the best medical minds in the galaxy, Anakin replied. People who fled the Empire, who refused to use their talents for oppression. If anyone can redesign this suit to function without the dark side, it's them. And if they can't, he paused. Then I will face my death knowing that I gave you everything I had left to give. Leia stepped forward, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. You destroyed Alderaan. Tarkin destroyed Alderaan, Anakin corrected gently. But you are right, I stood by and did nothing to stop it. I allowed him to use you as leverage, to torture you, to murder your entire world as a demonstration of Imperial power. There is no apology sufficient for that crime. No redemption adequate to balance those scales. I can only offer you the truth, I was a coward. I told myself that I had no choice, that I was following orders, that the Emperor's will was absolute. But those were lies I told myself to avoid facing what I had become. And what have you become? Leia's voice was sharp as a vibroblade. A cautionary tale, Anakin said quietly. A warning about what happens when fear and attachment and the desire for control consume someone completely. I became everything the Jedi feared, everything Obi-Wan warned me against. And I dragged the entire galaxy down with me. The hologram flickered. Luke and Leia exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them through their twin bond. Finally, Luke spoke. We need to discuss this with Alliance Command. But I have one question first. If we agree to this, if we bring you into the rebellion, will you submit to our authority? Will you follow orders, even if those orders go against your instincts as a Sith Lord? I am not a Sith Lord anymore, Anakin said firmly. I am attempting to be a Jedi again, though whether that is possible after everything I've done, I do not know. But yes, I will submit to Alliance authority. I will follow lawful orders. I will place myself under guard, under constant surveillance, whatever you require to feel safe. My power is at your disposal, not my command. Admiral Akbar spoke again. If you're truly committed to this defection, you will power down the Executor's weapon systems and allow our ships to approach. You will permit rebel troops to board your vessel and secure it. You will submit to restraints and surrender any weapons. These are non-negotiable terms. Anakin felt a moment of pure instinct rebellion, Vader's pride, Vader's fury at the idea of surrendering to anyone. But that was Vader's voice, not his own. He pushed it down. Agreed, he said. Admiral Pyatt will coordinate with your forces. The Executor is yours. You can order your crew to stand down. Leia asked skeptically. They'll just let rebel troops board a superstar destroyer without a fight? The crew of the Executor has followed my orders through every battle for 5 years, Anakin replied. They will follow them now. Though I suspect many will choose to remain loyal to the Empire and request transport back to Imperial space. Those who wish to leave should be allowed to do so without reprisal. Luke nodded slowly. We'll discuss your terms with Alliance Command and respond within the hour. Until then, maintain your position. Any movement from the Executor will be interpreted as hostile action. Understood. Anakin paused. Luke, thank you. For giving me this chance. For not simply destroying my ship the moment you entered the system. Don't thank me yet, Luke replied, but his voice carried a note of something that might have been sympathy. We haven't agreed to anything. And even if we do, you're going to face justice for your crimes. The Alliance isn't going to just forgive 20 years of atrocities. I would not want them to, Anakin said. Whatever punishment is deemed appropriate, I will accept it. I only ask that before that punishment is carried out, you allow me to help you defeat the Emperor. The hologram terminated. Anakin stood alone in his meditation chamber, feeling the suit system struggle to keep his body functional. Pain radiated through his chest, not the familiar agony that he had used as fuel for decades, but a new kind of suffering. The suffering of hope deferred, of uncertain redemption, of a future that might never come. Through the Force, he reached out tentatively toward his children. Luke's presence was conflicted but warm, a candle flame that refused to be extinguished. Leia's presence was harder to read, anger, yes, but also curiosity, and beneath that, the faintest echo of the little girl who had died with Alderaan. Both of them carried Padme's strength. Both of them were stronger than he had ever been. If he died bringing them together, giving them the tools to defeat Palpatine, perhaps that would be enough. Perhaps that would finally balance the scales. The holographic war room aboard the Rebel Command ship blazed with tactical displays showing the fragmentation of the Galactic Empire. In the 72 hours since Vader's defection became known throughout Imperial ranks, the Emperor's iron grip had begun to crack. Mon Mothma stood at the center of the chaos, her normally composed expression showing rare signs of strain. Around her, military leaders shouted over each other, trying to process the flood of intelligence reports coming in from across the galaxy. The Second Fleet has splintered, Admiral Akbar announced, his gravelly voice cutting through the noise. Half the ships are maintaining loyalty to the Emperor. The other half have declared for Vader. Declared for Vader? General Rekin looked appalled. We haven't even confirmed we're accepting his defection and already Imperial forces are choosing sides. They're not declaring for the rebellion, Akbar clarified. They're declaring personal loyalty to Vader himself. Apparently, he inspired more devotion among his troops than we realized. 17 Star destroyers, multiple support vessels, and an estimated 50,000 personnel are refusing to acknowledge the Emperor's authority unless Vader orders them to. Luke stood in the corner of the war room, watching the galaxy tear itself apart because of his father's choice. Beside him, Leia processed tactical data on a datapad, her expression unreadable. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Rekin said. Vader isn't just a single asset, he's a cult of personality. If we bring him into the Alliance, we're not gaining one defector. We're gaining a private army that answers to him alone. Or we're gaining 50,000 Imperial personnel who might be convinced to fight for the rebellion, Luke countered. Trained soldiers, experienced officers, people who already hate the Emperor enough to commit treason. People who followed Vader through 2 decades of atrocities, Leia added coldly. People who crushed rebellions, enforced Imperial law, and participated in war crimes. Are we really going to welcome them with open arms? We welcome anyone willing to fight against the Empire, Mon Mothma said firmly. Our principles don't change based on convenience. If these troops genuinely want to defect, we evaluate them individually. Some may be war criminals who deserve trial. Others may be conscripts who had no choice but to serve. We investigate, we judge fairly, and we act according to Alliance law. A new voice crackled over the comm system, Admiral Pyatt, transmitting from the Executor. Alliance Command, this is Admiral Pyatt. I have a situation report you need to hear. Mon Mothma gestured, and Pyatt's hologram materialized in the war room. The Imperial officer looked exhausted, his uniform disheveled in a way that would have been unthinkable under normal circumstances. Admiral, Mon Mothma acknowledged. What's your status? The Executor is secure under rebel guard, as agreed, Pyatt reported. Lord Vader has submitted to restraints and medical observation. But that's not why I'm contacting you. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The Emperor has issued orders throughout the Imperial Navy. Any ship, any officer, any personnel who maintain loyalty to Vader are to be destroyed on sight. No trials, no interrogations, no mercy. He's effectively declared civil war within his own military. The war room fell silent. Luke felt cold dread settle in his stomach. How widespread is this? Akbar asked. Widespread enough that entire sectors are in chaos, Pyatt replied. The 3rd and 5th fleets are engaging each other over Quat. The Imperial garrison on Fonder has barricaded itself against loyalist forces. On Coruscant itself, there are reports of stormtroopers fighting stormtroopers in the streets. He looked directly at Mon Mothma. The Emperor isn't trying to reclaim Vader. He's trying to purge anyone who might have even considered following Vader's example. He's terrified, Luke realized aloud. The Emperor built his entire regime on fear and absolute control. Vader's defection proves that even his most loyal servants can turn against him. He has to destroy that possibility completely, or risk losing everything. This creates opportunities, Akbar said, his tactical mind already working. While the Empire fights itself, we can strike at strategic targets, liberate systems that have been waiting for a chance to break free. We could gain more ground in the next month than we have in the last 2 years. We could also watch the galaxy burn, Leia countered. Imperial forces fighting each other means civilian casualties, infrastructure destruction, economic collapse. The Empire was tyrannical, but it provided stability. If it fractures completely, we could be looking at decades of warlordism and chaos. Then we need to move quickly, Mon Mothma said. We need to present a viable alternative to both the Emperor and to Vader's splinter faction. We need to show the galaxy that the Alliance offers something better than either Imperial tyranny or factional warfare. That's going to require resources we don't have, Riken pointed out. Our fleet is already stretched thin. If we try to occupy and stabilize Imperial systems while also fighting Loyalist forces, we'll collapse under the weight. Which is why we need Vader's forces, Luke said. Everyone turned to look at him. Not fighting for Vader, fighting for the Alliance. If we can convince those 50,000 troops that the rebellion represents a genuine chance for a better galaxy, we turn an Imperial civil war into a revolution. And if we can't convince them? Leia asked. If they stay loyal to Vader personally rather than to any cause or principle? Then we have a problem, Luke admitted. But we won't know unless we try. Mon Mothma studied Luke for a long moment, then nodded. Commander Skywalker, I'm authorizing you to speak with the defecting Imperial forces. You'll have diplomatic credentials and military escort. Your objective is to determine whether these troops can be integrated into the Alliance or whether they represent a separate faction we'll have to negotiate with. And Vader? Luke asked. What's his status? Currently imprisoned aboard the medical frigate, Pyatt reported. Under guard by an entire company of rebel soldiers, all volunteers who understand the risk. Medical teams are analyzing his suit systems, trying to determine if there's a way to sustain his life functions without relying on dark side energy. Can it be done? Luke pressed. Pyatt hesitated. The medical droids say it's theoretically possible, but it would require complete redesign of the life support systems. They'd essentially have to rebuild the suit from the inside out while keeping him alive during the process. The survival rate for such a procedure is not encouraging. Luke felt something twist in his chest. His father had survived for 20 years in that armor, had become one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy despite his injuries. The idea that he might die now, just as he'd chosen to turn back toward the light. Tell the medical teams to do whatever it takes, Luke said. We didn't bring him this far just to watch him die from system failure. Luke, Leia said quietly, touching his arm. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that he won't survive. Even if the surgery works, even if they rebuild his suit, he spent decades saturated in the dark side. The damage to his body, his connection to the Force, it might be irreversible. I know, Luke replied. But I have to try. He's our father, Leia. He's trying to make things right. He can't make things right, Leia said, her voice hard. 2 billion people died on Alderaan. Thousands more across the galaxy. A deathbed conversion doesn't balance those scales. I'm not asking you to forgive him, Luke said. I'm asking you to give him a chance to help us end this war. Isn't that what the rebellion is supposed to be about? Giving people a chance to choose something better. Before Leia could respond, the war room's alarm systems blared. Akbar's console lit up with urgent tactical data. Multiple Imperial vessels just entered the system, he announced. 15 Star Destroyers, headed directly for our position. Configuration suggests Loyalist forces under direct Imperial command. They found us, Riken said grimly. Someone in Vader's defecting forces must have transmitted our location. Or the Emperor triangulated our position from multiple sources, Mon Mothma said. Either way, we need to evacuate immediately. Admiral Akbar, begin emergency dispersal protocols. All ships scatter to predetermined coordinates. We'll regroup once we're certain we haven't been followed. What about Vader? Luke demanded. The medical frigate can't jump to hyperspace in the middle of surgery. Then the surgery stops, Leia said flatly. We're not risking the entire fleet to save one man, even if he is our father. Belay that, Mon Mothma said, her voice carrying absolute authority. Commander Skywalker is correct. If Vader dies now, those 50,000 defecting troops lose their figurehead. They'll fragment, some will return to the Empire, others will become pirates or warlords. We need him alive, both for the intelligence he carries and for the symbolic importance his survival represents. She turned to Akbar. Assign escort vessels to the medical frigate. Jump it to the Polis Massa system, remote, minimal Imperial presence, medical facilities we can use if needed. The rest of the fleet disperses as planned. That leaves the frigate exposed, Riken protested. If the Empire finds it. Then we pray they don't, Mon Mothma interrupted. But we're not abandoning Vader. Not yet. The war room exploded into action. Officers shouted orders, tactical displays updated with escape vectors, and the rebel fleet began its emergency scatter. Luke grabbed his comlink and ran for the hangar bay, Leia close behind him. Where are you going? She called after him. To the medical frigate, Luke shouted back. If the Empire attacks, they'll need every defender they can get. Luke, you can't. He's my father. Luke spun to face her, and she stopped, startled by the intensity in his eyes. I know what he's done. I know he doesn't deserve redemption. But the Force brought us together for a reason, and I'm not walking away until I understand what that reason is. Leia stared at him for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she nodded. Fine, she said. But I'm coming with you. You don't have to. He's my father too, Leia said quietly. And if the Empire is going to kill him, I want to look him in the eye first. I want him to know exactly what he destroyed when he helped create the Empire. I want him to see Alderaan's ashes reflected in my face. Luke understood then that Leia's hatred was as powerful as his hope, two sides of the same need, the same hunger for answers from a father neither of them had known. Together, they ran for the hangar bay as the rebel fleet tore itself apart around them, each ship fleeing into hyperspace while Imperial forces closed in like a tightening noose. And aboard the medical frigate, surrounded by guards and surgical droids, Darth Vader lay unconscious, his suit opened like a dissected machine, his ruined body exposed to the unfiltered air, while medical teams raced against time to save a man who had spent 20 years proving he didn't deserve saving. The galaxy was fracturing. And at the heart of that fracture, one family tried desperately to understand whether redemption was possible, or whether some sins were simply too great to forgive. The medical frigate Redemption, named years before anyone could have imagined the irony, shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near Polis Massa. Luke stood in the observation deck, watching the escort ships form a defensive perimeter around the frigate while medical teams worked frantically in the surgical bay below. Leia stood beside him, her arms crossed, her presence in the Force a storm of conflicting emotions that Luke could feel even without trying to sense them. They hadn't spoken since boarding the frigate. What was there to say? They were rushing to protect a father who had spent decades as a monster, hoping to save him so he could face justice for crimes that numbered in the millions. The door hissed open behind them. Admiral Piet entered, looking more haggard than Luke had ever seen an Imperial officer. He had chosen to remain with Vader, loyalty, Luke realized, that transcended uniform or ideology. Commander Skywalker, Princess Leia, Piet acknowledged formally. The medical team has requested your presence. They've encountered complications. Luke's heart clenched. Is he dying? Not yet, Piet said carefully. But the lead surgeon believes you should see what they've discovered. Both of you. They followed Piet through the frigate's corridors to the surgical bay. The doors opened to reveal a scene that belonged in a nightmare. Vader's suit had been almost completely disassembled, revealing the extent of his injuries for the first time. Luke stopped breathing. His father's body was barely recognizable as human. Burns covered nearly every inch of skin, old scar tissue layered over older scars. The respirator was connected directly to Vader's throat through a permanent tracheotomy. His limbs were cybernetic from shoulder and hip down, not clean prosthetics like Luke's hand, but crude, functional replacements that looked like they'd been installed in a hurry and never properly upgraded. But worse than the physical damage was what the medical scanners showed: Vader's internal organs were failing. His lungs were scarred beyond natural function, his heart required constant electrical stimulation to beat, his nervous system had been rewired so many times that it barely resembled human anatomy. "Force help us," Leia whispered, and Luke heard genuine horror in her voice, not for Vader the Sith Lord, but for the broken man who had somehow survived this much damage for 2 decades. The chief medical officer, a Twi'lek woman named Dr. Sala, approached them with a datapad. Her face was grim. "Commander, Princess, what you're seeing is unprecedented," she said. "I've treated burn victims, amputees, soldiers who survived catastrophic injuries. But this," she gestured at Vader's exposed form. "This is sustained torture. The suit was never designed to heal him. It was designed to keep him alive in a state of perpetual agony." "The Emperor," Luke said, understanding flooding through him. "He did this on purpose." "The original suit could have been far more advanced," Dr. Sala confirmed. "Medical technology 20 years ago was capable of giving him comfortable prosthetics, effective pain management, even synthetic skin grafts. Instead, the Emperor gave him the bare minimum to survive. Every movement causes pain. Every breath is labor. The suit is a prison designed to generate constant suffering." "Why?" Leia demanded. "What purpose would that serve?" "The dark side feeds on pain," Piet said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "I served under Lord Vader for 5 years. I watched him use his suffering as fuel for his power. The more pain he experienced, the more powerful he became. The Emperor didn't just want an apprentice, he wanted a weapon perpetually sharpened by agony." Luke felt sick. His father had lived every day for 20 years in a hell of the Emperor's creation, using that hell as the only thing that kept him alive. "Can you help him?" Luke asked Dr. Sala. "I can try," she said. "But here's the problem, his body has adapted to the suffering. His entire physiology has restructured itself around pain as a constant. If we remove that pain, if we give him comfortable prosthetics and effective life support, his body might go into shock. He could die from the relief." "That's insane," Leia said. "It's the dark side," Dr. Sala replied. "I've consulted with every medical database we have on Force-sensitive physiology. When someone is that deeply immersed in the dark side for that long, their biology changes. They become dependent on the negative emotions that sustain them. Removing that dependency is like removing a vital organ." "Then what do we do?" Luke pressed. "We have 2 options," Dr. Sala said. "First, we can redesign the suit to be more comfortable while maintaining enough discomfort to keep his body from going into shock. It's a stopgap measure, he'd still be in pain, but less of it. He might survive another few years." "And the second option?" Dr. Sala hesitated. "We try to transition him completely away from dark side dependency. It would require a gradual reduction in pain stimuli while simultaneously supporting him through force healing techniques. But that would require a Jedi healer who understands both the dark and light sides of the Force well enough to guide him through the transition." "There are no Jedi healers left," Leia said. "The Emperor hunted them all down." "Not all of them," a new voice said. Everyone turned. Standing in the surgical bay doorway was a figure Luke had thought he'd never see again, Master Yoda, leaning on his Jimmer stick, his ancient eyes reflecting centuries of wisdom and sorrow. "Master Yoda." Luke rushed forward. "How did you?" "Found you, the Force did," Yoda interrupted, hobbling into the bay. "Sensed a great disturbance, I did. The dark side, fracturing. The chosen one, turning. See this with my own eyes, I must." The ancient Jedi Master approached Vader's unconscious form, studying it with an expression that Luke couldn't read. Sadness? Vindication? Pity? "Anakin Skywalker," Yoda said softly. "So certain I was, that dead you were. That only Vader remained. Wrong, perhaps, I was. Can you help him?" Luke asked desperately. "Can you heal him?" Yoda's ears drooped. "Heal his body, perhaps possible. Heal his spirit. That, only he can do. The Jedi Master looked up at Luke. Understand, you must, redemption is not a destination. A journey it is, long and painful. Help him begin that journey, I can. But walk it himself, he must. He's willing, Luke said. He turned away from the Emperor. He's trying to come back to the light. Trying, not enough is, Yoda replied. 2 decades of darkness, wash away so easily, they do not. Face what he has done, he must. Accept responsibility for his crimes, he must. And if survive he does, live with that burden, he must, for whatever time remains to him. Leia stepped forward. Can you really help him? Or are you just here to judge him for falling in the first place? Yoda turned his ancient eyes to her. Judge him? No. Judge him, the Force already has. Judge him, the galaxy will continue to do. What I offer is not absolution. Not forgiveness. Only the possibility of survival long enough to face that judgment with eyes unclouded by the dark side. He tapped his stick against the floor. But understand this, you both must, if save him we do, if heal his body and guide him from darkness, what emerges will not be the Vader you fear, nor the Anakin you never knew. Something new, he will be. Something shaped by his crimes and his choices to turn from them. That man, whoever he becomes, will live with guilt that would crush a lesser being. Good, Leia said coldly. He should live with it. Every single death. Every destroyed world. Every broken family. He should carry that weight until it breaks him. Princess, Yoda said gently, break him, it already has. Why else would he turn? Carrying the weight of Alderaan, of the Jedi Purge, of everything he has done, that burden, too much for anyone to bear. That he tries anyway, that he chooses to face it rather than die as Vader, that, perhaps, is the first step toward redemption. The surgical bay fell silent. Medical droids continued their work around Vader's unconscious form, maintaining his life functions while the living beings debated whether that life was worth saving. Finally, Luke spoke. Do it. Help him. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, help him survive long enough to make things right. Make things right, he cannot, Yoda said. Too much damage, too many deaths. But help end the Empire, he might. Help defeat the Emperor, he might. Help his children build something better from the ashes, that, perhaps possible is. Yoda moved to Vader's side and placed one small, 3-fingered hand on the scarred flesh of his chest. The Jedi Master closed his eyes, and Luke felt the Force surge through the room, not the violent, consuming power of the dark side, but something gentler, more patient. The light side, flowing into Vader's broken body like water into cracked earth. Vader's eyes snapped open. Not the burning yellow of Sith corruption, but something between, still touched by darkness but shot through with flickers of clearer color. Blue, like they had been once. Like Anakin Skywalker's eyes. His gaze found Luke first, then Leia, then settled on Yoda. When he tried to speak, his voice emerged as a wet rasp, unfiltered by the vocabulator. Master. Yoda. Rest, you must, Yoda commanded. Much work ahead, there is. Heal your body, we will. Heal your spirit, that journey, yours alone must be. Vader's eyes drifted closed again, but not before Luke saw something in them that he had never seen before. Tears. His father was crying. And for the first time since learning the truth, Luke felt a spark of genuine hope that maybe, just maybe, Anakin Skywalker wasn't completely gone after all. The Emperor's throne room on Coruscant trembled with dark side energy so violent that the royal guard stationed outside the doors could feel their teeth vibrating in their skulls. Inside, Palpatine paced like a caged predator, his yellow eyes burning with fury that would have incinerated a lesser being. He dares, the Emperor hissed to the shadows. He dares to seek redemption. To crawl back toward the light. After everything I gave him. After everything I made him. Through the Force, he had felt Yoda's presence touch Vader, his weapon, his greatest achievement, and begin the process of healing. The ancient Jedi Master was attempting to save Anakin Skywalker, to undo 2 decades of carefully crafted corruption. Unacceptable. Palpatine reached out through the Force, searching for the bond he had forged with Vader over 20 years of master-apprentice connection. That bond had frayed since Bespin, weakened by distance and Vader's deliberate attempts to sever it, but it still existed. Threads of dark energy, invisible but unbreakable, connecting them across light years. He grasped those threads and pulled. Aboard the Redemption, Vader's body convulsed. Medical equipment shrieked alarms as his vital signs spiked catastrophically. Luke rushed to his father's side as medical droids scrambled to stabilize him. "What's happening?" Luke demanded. Yoda's eyes narrowed. "The Emperor. Reaching through their bond, he is trying to kill Vader from across the galaxy. Can he do that? Strong, their connection is. Built on pain, on suffering, on decades of domination." Yoda's hands moved in complex patterns, weaving light-side energy around Vader like a shield. "But alone, strong enough I am not. Help me, you must. I don't know how. Trust the Force, you must. Your father, feel him. The connection between you, use it. Show him the light. Remind him why he chose to turn." Luke closed his eyes and reached through the Force, finding the bond that connected him to his father. It was there, stronger than the bond with the Emperor, but newer, untested. Luke poured his own energy into it, not trying to control or dominate, but simply offering support. "I'm here," Luke thought, projecting it through the Force. "You're not alone." And in the swirling darkness of Vader's mind, caught between Palpatine's fury and Yoda's healing, Anakin Skywalker heard his son's voice and clung to it like a lifeline. In the throne room, Palpatine felt his grip on Vader weaken. The boy, the accursed Skywalker boy, was interfering, using their father-son bond to anchor Vader to the light side. And worse, Yoda was there, the ancient troll who had escaped Order 66, now attempting to complete Vader's redemption. "No," Palpatine snarled. If he could not reclaim Vader, if he could not drag his apprentice back into darkness, then he would ensure no one else could have him either. He activated a holographic communicator, and a figure materialized before him, robed, hooded, kneeling. "My new apprentice," Palpatine said, his voice dripping with malice. "I have a task for you. The traitor Vader is aboard a medical frigate near Polis Massa. Take the Inquisitorius. Take whatever forces you require. Find him. And kill everyone aboard that ship." The figure bowed. "As you command, my master." "What of Vader himself?" "Bring me his head," Palpatine said coldly. "I want proof that the Chosen One is finally, truly dead." 6 hours later, proximity alarms screamed throughout the Redemption. Luke rushed to the command deck, where Admiral Piett was coordinating with the escort ships. Imperial vessels dropping out of hyperspace, Piett reported, his face pale. 2 Interdictor-class cruisers and 8 star destroyers. "They're deploying fighters and," he paused, studying his sensors. "Force sensitives. Multiple signatures. The Inquisitorius. The Emperor's personal hunters," Leia said, appearing at Luke's side. "He's not taking any chances. Our escort ships can't hold off that kind of firepower," Piett said grimly. "We need to evacuate the frigate. Get Vader to escape pods and scatter." "He'll die if we move him," Dr. Sala interrupted over the intercom. "His surgery is incomplete. His life support is jury-rigged. Moving him now would be fatal." Luke felt the weight of impossible choice settle on his shoulders. Stay and fight with inadequate forces against overwhelming odds, or run and watch his father die. What would a Jedi do? The answer came not from Obi-Wan's teachings or Yoda's wisdom, but from his own heart. A Jedi would stand. "We're not running," Luke said. Hyatt, coordinate the defense. Leia, get everyone who can't fight to the escape pods. I'm going to the hangar bay. What are you going to do? Leia demanded. Luke grabbed his lightsaber. What I was trained to do. What my father did before he fell. He met her eyes. I'm going to be a Jedi. The first wave of TIE fighters screamed toward the Redemption, met by desperate fire from the escort ships. Luke launched in his X-Wing, R2-D2 whistling nervously in the astromech socket. Around him, a dozen rebel pilots formed up, volunteers who knew they were flying into a battle they couldn't win. Gold leader to all fighters, Luke transmitted. We're not trying to destroy the Imperial fleet. We're buying time. Hit and fade, keep them occupied, protect the frigate. Every minute we hold is another minute for the medical team to stabilize Vader. Copy that, Gold Leader, came the responses, voices tight with fear and determination. The battle became a chaotic swirl of laser fire and exploding ships. Luke flew on instinct, letting the Force guide his movements as he had at Yavin, his X-Wing dancing between TIE fighters like a hawk among sparrows. But even as he destroyed enemy fighters, more poured from the Star Destroyer's hangars. Then he felt it, a cold presence in the Force, dark and hungry, approaching the Redemption in a specially modified assault shuttle. The Inquisitors. Luke broke from the dogfight and arrowed toward the frigate, but he was too slow. The shuttle attached itself to the Redemption's hull like a parasite, and through the Force, Luke felt the Inquisitors begin cutting through the airlock. He had to get back to the ship. Inside the Redemption, rebel soldiers established defensive positions around the surgical bay. They were infantry, not prepared to fight Force users, but they held their ground as the airlock exploded inward in a shower of molten metal. 3 figures emerged from the smoke, Inquisitors, their double-bladed lightsabers spinning in deadly arcs. They moved through the soldiers like death incarnate, red blades carving through blaster fire and flesh with equal ease. The lead Inquisitor, identified by the broken circle tattooed across his face, pointed toward the surgical bay. Vader is there, he said, his voice hollow. Kill everyone. Bring me his head. They advanced. In the surgical bay, Yoda stood before Vader's unconscious form, his small stature somehow filling the room with authority. Dr. Sala and her team fled, but the guards, 20 hardened rebel veterans, formed a line beside the Jedi Master. Run, you should, Yoda told them. Face Inquisitors, trained soldiers cannot. With respect, Master Jedi, the guard captain said, raising his blaster rifle, we didn't volunteer for this mission to run when things got hard. Yoda's ears lifted slightly, the closest the ancient Jedi came to a smile. Brave, you are. Foolish also. But brave. The Inquisitors crashed through the surgical bay doors. What followed was slaughter, but not the slaughter the Inquisitors expected. Yoda moved with a speed that defied his age, his lightsaber a green blur that intercepted every strike, every Force push, every attempt to reach Vader. The rebel guards fired in coordinated volleys, forcing the Inquisitors to divide their attention between blocking blaster bolts and engaging the Jedi Master. But Yoda was 900 years old, and even a Grand Master could tire. One Inquisitor slipped past his guard, blade raised to strike down Vader. And froze, suspended in midair. Vader's eyes were open. His hand was raised. And through sheer force of will, despite his incomplete surgery, despite his weakened state, he was holding the Inquisitor immobile through the Force. You were my student, Vader rasped, his voice unfiltered and raw. I trained you. Taught you to serve the Emperor. Twisted you into what you are. The Inquisitor struggled against Vader's grip, terror bleeding through his dark side aura. Lord Vader. I am not Vader anymore, Anakin said, and with a gesture, he slammed the Inquisitor into the wall hard enough to crack the bulkhead. I am attempting to be Anakin Skywalker again. And Anakin Skywalker would not stand by while you murder innocents. The other 2 Inquisitors turned their attention to Vader, recognizing the greater threat. They raised their lightsabers. And Luke Skywalker exploded through the surgical bay's viewport, force pulling himself from the vacuum of space where he'd abandoned his X-Wing. His lightsaber ignited mid-flight, blue blade intercepting red as he landed between the Inquisitors and his father. "You want him?" Luke said, his voice hard. "You go through me." Father and son, standing together for the first time. Anakin Skywalker and Luke Skywalker, facing the darkness the Emperor had created. The Inquisitors attacked. What followed was a battle that would be remembered in Jedi holocrons for generations, if any survived to record it. Luke fought with the raw talent and instinct that had destroyed the Death Star, his movements unpredictable, guided by the Force. Anakin, still tethered to medical equipment, could barely move, but his mastery of the Force was absolute. He deflected attacks, redirected Force lightning, created barriers of pure energy that protected the medical staff and guards. And Yoda, the last Grand Master, fought with the wisdom of centuries, his small form a whirlwind of precision and controlled power. Together, the three Jedi overwhelmed the Inquisitors. One fell to Luke's blade. Another was crushed by Anakin's Force grip. The third fled, limping and burned, back toward the assault shuttle. But the victory was Pyrrhic. Anakin collapsed, his incomplete cybernetics sparking, his life signs plummeting. The medical equipment he'd been disconnected from during the fight screamed warnings. "Father!" Luke dropped to his knees beside him. Anakin's eyes, now fully blue, the yellow corruption burned away by the light side he'd drawn upon, found Luke's face. "Proud of you." "I am," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You are, the Jedi I should have been." "Don't talk like that," Luke said desperately. "We're going to fix you." "We're going to, Luke." Anakin's mechanical hand gripped his son's. "Thank you. For giving me this chance. For letting me fight for something good, one last time." "This isn't the last time," Luke insisted. "You're going to survive. You're going to help us defeat the Emperor. You're going to." But Anakin's eyes had already closed. The silence in the surgical bay was broken only by the desperate beeping of medical equipment and Dr. Sala's barked orders as her team swarmed around Anakin's failing body. Luke refused to move, his hand still gripping his father's cybernetic fingers, as if sheer will could keep the life from draining away. His heart stopped, one of the medical droids announced. "Defibrillator," Dr. Sala commanded. "Now." The medical team worked with frantic efficiency, but Luke could feel through the Force that his father was slipping away, not into death, but into something else. A state between life and death, where the body failed but the spirit lingered, refusing to let go. Yoda placed a hand on Luke's shoulder. "Time to choose, your father has. Live in agony and face his crimes, or surrender and find peace. His decision, this must be." "He already chose," Luke said fiercely. "He chose to turn from the darkness. He chose to fight beside me. He doesn't get to give up now." Through the Force, Luke reached for the bond connecting him to his father, that thread of light that had anchored Anakin when the Emperor tried to reclaim him. He poured every ounce of his own life energy into it, refusing to accept that this was the end. "You don't get to die," Luke projected through the bond. "Not now. Not like this. We haven't had enough time. I need to know you. Leia needs to see you answer for what you've done. The galaxy needs you to help fix what you broke. You don't get to escape into death and leave us with the wreckage." For a moment, nothing happened. The medical equipment continued its death song, and Luke felt Yoda's hand tighten on his shoulder in sympathy. Then, impossibly, Anakin's heart beat. Once. Twice. A rhythm, irregular and weak, but present. "He's stabilizing," Dr. Sala said, disbelief coloring her voice. "I don't know how, but his body is responding. His midichlorian count is. Force help us, it's actually increasing. I've never seen anything like this." The light side, Yoda said softly. "Truly committed, he is. drawing on it to sustain himself, rather than the dark side's pain. Possible, I did not know this was. Not for one so corrupted. Luke felt tears streaming down his face, relief, exhaustion, and something deeper. Through their bond, he could feel his father's presence growing stronger, not as the towering darkness of Darth Vader, but as something quieter, more human. Anakin Skywalker was truly awakening. 3 days later, the Redemption limped into a secret Alliance medical station deep in the Outer Rim. The battle at Polis Massa had cost them half their escort ships and 17 pilots, but they had survived. More importantly, so had Anakin. Luke stood in the observation room, watching through reinforced transparisteel as medical droids completed the final stages of his father's reconstructed life support system. The new suit was sleeker, more advanced, designed for comfort rather than torment. The breathing apparatus was internalized, eliminating the need for the external mask except in extreme environments. Synthetic skin grafts covered some of the worst scarring. It wasn't a cure. Anakin would never be fully healed, would never reclaim the body he'd had before Mustafar. But he could breathe without constant pain, could move without agony radiating through every cybernetic connection. He could, perhaps, begin to live rather than merely survive. Leia entered the observation room, her expression carefully neutral. She hadn't spoken to Anakin since he'd awakened. Hadn't acknowledged his attempts to reach out through the Force. Luke understood, her anger was a wound that wouldn't heal quickly, if ever. Mon Mothma wants to know when he'll be ready for questioning, Leia said without preamble. Alliance intelligence has a list of approximately 7,000 questions about Imperial operations, strategic planning, and the Emperor's long-term objectives. He's barely conscious for more than a few hours at a time, Luke replied. His body is still adapting to the new systems. Then they'll question him when he can stay conscious longer. Leia's voice was hard. Luke, I know he's our father. I know he saved us during the battle. But that doesn't erase 2 decades of atrocities. The Alliance has a right to the information he possesses, and the galaxy has a right to see him answer for his crimes. I'm not asking for him to be pardoned, Luke said quietly. I'm asking for time. Time for him to heal enough to actually be useful to the Alliance. Time for us to understand who he is now that he's not Vader anymore. Who he is. Leia's laugh was bitter. He's a war criminal, Luke. A mass murderer who happened to have a change of heart when it became convenient. That doesn't transform him into someone worthy of our sympathy. I'm not asking you to sympathize with him, Luke said. I'm asking you to accept that he's trying to change. That he's taking responsibility for what he's done. Taking responsibility would mean facing a tribunal, Leia countered. Accepting whatever punishment is deemed appropriate for his crimes. Is he willing to do that? Or does he expect his sudden conversion to buy him clemency? Before Luke could respond, a weak voice emerged from the surgical bay's intercom. I expect nothing. Both twins turned. On the surgical platform, Anakin had awakened. The medical droid stepped back as he slowly, painfully, sat up. Without the mask, his face was visible, scarred, pale, but recognizably human. His eyes, no longer touched by Sith corruption, were clear blue. I expect no mercy, Anakin continued, his voice raw but no longer mechanically filtered. No forgiveness. No redemption. I know what I am, what I have done. I will face whatever tribunal the Alliance convenes. I will answer for every crime, every death, every act of cruelty I committed in service to the Empire. He looked directly at Leia through the transparisteel. I destroyed your world, Princess Leia. I stood by while Tarkin murdered 2 billion people, including your father, your real father, the man who raised you and loved you. I did this because I was a coward, because I had surrendered my agency and my conscience to the Emperor years before. No apology will ever be sufficient. No punishment will ever balance those scales. Leia's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her voice remained steady. Then why should we let you live? Because I know things that can save lives, Anakin replied simply. I know the Emperor's contingency plans, his secret weapons, the locations of research facilities developing biological weapons and planet-destroying technology. I know which Imperial commanders are fanatics who will fight to the last man, and which might be convinced to surrender if approached correctly. I know how to end this war faster, with fewer casualties on both sides. He paused, gathering strength. Use me. Drain every piece of intelligence from my mind. Force me to fight battles I don't have the strength for. Push me until my reconstructed body fails. And when I have given you everything I have, when there is nothing left that I can offer, then execute me. I will face that death knowing that at least in my final days, I tried to repair some infinitesimal fraction of the damage I caused. The observation room fell silent. Luke looked at his sister, seeing the war of emotions on her face, hatred and grief and something else, something that might have been the barest recognition that Anakin Skywalker was genuinely trying to atone. I don't forgive you, Leia said finally, her voice breaking. I will never forgive you. But I'll accept your service to the Alliance. I'll take every piece of intelligence you can provide. And when the war is over, when the Emperor is defeated, I will personally testify at your trial to ensure that justice is served. That is all I ask, Anakin said quietly. Over the following weeks, Anakin became the Alliance's most valuable intelligence asset. He sat for hours of debriefing, providing detailed information about Imperial fleet movements, command structures, secret facilities, and the Emperor's psychological weaknesses. He revealed the existence of a second Death Star under construction, more powerful than the first, hidden in the Outer Rim. He also trained Luke in advanced lightsaber techniques, sharing knowledge of the Force that had been lost with the Jedi Purge. Not as Darth Vader teaching an apprentice to embrace darkness, but as Anakin Skywalker trying to pass on what remained of his Jedi training before it was too late. In quieter moments, he told his children about their mother. About Padmé's brilliance, her compassion, her unshakable belief that democracy and peace were worth fighting for. He told them how she had died, not killed by Anakin's force choke as the Emperor had claimed, but from a broken heart, believing that the man she loved had been consumed by darkness. She was wrong, Anakin said one evening, as he and his children sat in the Redemption's observation deck, watching stars streak past in hyperspace. Part of me survived. A very small part, buried so deeply that I convinced myself it was dead. But it wasn't. It waited. And when I learned that you existed, Luke, when I felt our connection through the Force, that part of me finally had enough strength to break through. Do you think she would forgive you? Luke asked. Mother, I mean. For what you became. Anakin was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. Padmé believed in justice, in accountability. She would want me to answer for my crimes, just as your sister does. But I hope, that she would be glad I turned back toward the light before the end. That I chose to fight beside you, even if it was far too late to truly make amends. Leia, who had been silent throughout the conversation, finally spoke. The Emperor is planning something. You can feel it, can't you? Through whatever remains of your connection to him. Anakin nodded. He is preparing for a final confrontation. He knows that my defection has fractured the Empire, that systems are rising in rebellion, that his carefully constructed tyranny is collapsing. He will make one last play for absolute power, and it will be catastrophic. Then we need to strike first, Luke said. Use the intelligence you've provided to hit him before he's ready. No, Anakin said. The Emperor wants us to attack. He's been manipulating events toward this confrontation for decades. He foresaw a battle between the rebellion and the Empire, with himself as the ultimate victor regardless of which side wins militarily. He will have contingencies, traps, fail-safes we cannot predict. Then what do we do? Leia demanded. Anakin met her eyes. We give him what he doesn't expect. Not a military assault, but a personal confrontation. Luke and I will face him together, father and son, light side users confronting the dark. That is the only scenario the Emperor did not foresee, because he never imagined I could turn back to the light. That's suicide, Leia said flatly. Even together, you can't defeat the Emperor. He's the most powerful Sith Lord in 1,000 years. True, Anakin agreed. But we don't need to defeat him in combat. We need to unbalance him, to force him to choose between maintaining his empire and destroying us. In that moment of choice, when his attention is divided, that's when the Alliance strikes at his forces. That's when we end this war. Luke looked at his father, seeing not the terrifying figure of Darth Vader but a broken man trying desperately to make one final good choice. We do this together, Luke said. No sacrifices, no suicide missions. We face the Emperor, we survive, and we build something better from what's left. Anakin smiled, a genuine expression, free from the mechanical mask, touched by hope he had not felt in decades. Optimistic, like your mother. Very well, my son. We will face the Emperor together. And perhaps, if the Force wills it, we will both survive to see the Empire fall. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of the beings who traversed them. But within that small observation deck, a family, broken, scarred, but bound together by choice rather than blood alone, prepared to face the darkness one final time. The war was not over. The Emperor still commanded vast fleets and terrible weapons. The path ahead would be soaked in blood and sacrifice. But for the first time in 20 years, Anakin Skywalker had something worth fighting for beyond hatred and pain. He had hope. And hope, as the rebellion had proven time and again, could topple even the mightiest empire. The galaxy would remember this moment as the turning point, the day when Darth Vader, the Emperor's iron fist, chose his children over his master and ignited a chain of events that would reshape the galactic civil war. In the months that followed Anakin's defection, the Empire fractured along fault lines that had been hidden for decades. Systems that had chafed under Imperial tyranny saw Vader's turn as proof that even the most committed servants of darkness could choose differently. Rebellions erupted across the Outer Rim. Imperial commanders defected or declared independence, carving out their own territories from the crumbling edifice of Palpatine's regime. The Emperor, enraged by his apprentice's betrayal, became increasingly erratic. He purged entire fleets on suspicion of disloyalty, executed governors who failed to meet impossible quotas, and poured resources into superweapons rather than maintaining order. His desperation to punish Vader and reclaim absolute control only accelerated the Empire's collapse. But the cost was staggering. Worlds burned in the crossfire between Imperial loyalists and defectors. The power vacuum left by the Empire's fracturing spawned warlords and criminal syndicates. And the Alliance, stretched beyond its capacity, struggled to provide the stability that collapsing Imperial sectors desperately needed. Through it all, Anakin Skywalker worked to atone for 2 decades of atrocities. He shared every secret, every weakness in the Imperial war machine. He fought beside Alliance forces in critical battles, his presence on the battlefield inspiring both hope and terror. And he trained Luke, passing on what remained of the Jedi teachings, trying to ensure that the mistakes of his generation would not be repeated. His relationship with Leia remained fractured, she could not forgive him, and he did not ask her to. But she accepted his service, recognized his genuine effort to make amends, and slowly, painfully, began to see him not as Darth Vader but as Anakin Skywalker, a deeply flawed man trying desperately to be better than he had been. The final confrontation with the Emperor came, as Anakin had predicted, in a moment of his own choosing. Father and son faced Palpatine together on the second Death Star, and in that battle, the prophecy of the Chosen One finally reached its fulfillment. Not through Anakin alone, and not through Luke alone, but through both of them, 2 generations standing together against the darkness. The Emperor fell. The Empire shattered. And Anakin Skywalker, his body failing but his spirit finally at peace, lived just long enough to see the galaxy begin to heal. In the end, redemption was not about erasing the past or earning forgiveness. It was about making the choice, every day, to to be better than you were, to face the consequences of your actions and still choose to fight for something worth believing in. Anakin Skywalker had been the chosen one, destined to bring balance to the Force. But balance did not mean destroying the dark side or embracing the light exclusively. It meant understanding that both existed within everyone, and that the true measure of a person was which side they chose to serve when the moment of decision arrived. On Bespin, when Vader learned his son lived, he made his choice. And that choice changed everything. The galaxy far, far away would never be the same. The Skywalker legacy, tragedy and triumph intertwined, would echo through generations. A father who fell to darkness and clawed his way back. A son who refused to abandon hope. A daughter who demanded justice even when it hurt. Together, they proved that no one was beyond redemption, and no evil was so great that it could not be overcome by those willing to stand against it. May the Force be with them. And with all who choose the light, even after walking through darkness. May the Force be with you. More stories await.